Item number 30.
Increase in construction change order authority for the Charles E. Meyer Desalination Facility.
Little musical chairs over there. Ms. Alvarez, whenever you're ready.
So, Madam Mayor, Council members, I'm Linda Szymanski from Public Works Engineering and Project Manager for the Desalination Plant Construction. Wanted to chat with you a little bit today about where we are on the project as far as the contaminated soils that we've found. What I'd like to do is give a little bit of background on where we've been with this, what our current status is, give you an idea of the timeline and how long it's kind of taken us to kind of work our way through this problem. Talk a little bit about some of the schedule impacts and some of the estimated costs for this. So I think you all may remember this slide from the original presentation that we did on the plant. This is actually the old plant from back in 1991. The area that's outlined up there in blue is actually the area of the plant that is remaining. That will be refurbished and reused. The yellow and the green areas that I'm showing here are actually where we are going to be putting in new facilities. And then the purple area is actually where we have our electrical and our administration buildings. So that's the areas that we're really working in right now are the yellow, the green, and the purple areas. Our contractor was actually doing some removal of some underground utilities and noticed that there was some debris as they were actually removing those underground utilities from the soils. Because they noticed that, they went ahead and did some, actually dug some what we call pits and removed some soil from there. What they wanted to take a look at was whether the soil would be reusable as they had planned. They would take it out and then use it as backfill. Because of the debris in it, it doesn't have the same type of characteristics, and they were curious as to whether they could reuse it. They sent that away for that characterization. They also had some other work done on it. These are some examples of the debris that they found in the pits, just a myriad of things. We've seen this. This is somewhat similar to what we found when we actually worked on the Ortega groundwater treatment plant. Just an odd mix of debris, ceramic, glass, bricks, those types of things. And again, similar to what we had found at the Ortega groundwater treatment plant, when you find this type of debris, you also find other things in your soil, particularly the hydrocarbons. And we actually did find that we had some diesel and some heavier oil range hydrocarbons. That actually creates a site for us, and we needed to notify the county that we did find these. In a couple of spots, we also did find some lead, so that also caused us some concern. So based on that, as I said, we notified the county, and we went ahead with a soil assessment so that we could go ahead with the cleanup of the site. So we have had our contractor, who has a subcontractor, Rincon Environmental, who is very good at this type of work and actually did do our cleanup work for us at the Ortega groundwater treatment plant, proceed with this. We took about 30 samples. This actually shows the areas where we took the samples. And I think what we're trying to show in this area is, all of the lines that are kind of in the yellow and the green area, that's where we're going to be digging for the new electrical and the new underground piping. So what we tried to do was make sure that as we were digging, that we had a good assessment of where the different contaminants were. We ended up with about 30 different samples, and we actually sampled at different elevations in those particular sample areas, anywhere from 3 to 10 feet. So this is actually where we are today. This was actually before last week, before it started raining. But as you can see, we have made a good bit of progress. The trenches that you see there are actually for the electrical duct banks that are going to be going in. It's actually really very hard to tell, but if you actually look along this area here, you can see a little bit of an edge there. We actually have dug down approximately 4 feet. That's so that we can have the footings put in for where these skids will be coming in that will hold our membranes. And then these trenches actually flow underneath where those skids are going to be. So those are slightly deeper. So, nicely we have started to make progress. It feels good after having kind of gone through the assessment and the plan and that type of thing. So we are moving forward. Just to give you an idea of the timeline, the contractor did notify us on November 3rd that they had the unsuitable soils, and they provided us with the testing that I had shown you earlier. We immediately notified the county Environmental Health Services so that we could open a site with them. We were very fortunate in working with them. They helped us greatly in getting out our public notification, as we are required to do when we open a site. It is actually a 30-day public notification where no work can occur on site. At that point in time, we also submitted an application to the Air Pollution Control District. We actually do need a permit from them to be able to remove the soils. On November 18th, we began the assessment of the site, and I showed you where we drilled many holes. On November 24th, we started getting some of our preliminary results. Because of those results, we actually had to do some additional testing and went ahead and accomplished that. December 1st, we put together our remedial action plan. That's something that's required by the county for us to actually remove the soils. It tells how we're going to handle these soils and where they are going to be disposed of. As part of that, we started arranging the disposal. Our 30-day notification period that we were required to do ended on December 7th. On December 9th, we actually received our Air Pollution Control District permit, and we actually began excavations on December 14th. Having gone through the Ortega groundwater treatment plant soil cleanup, this is actually one of the fastest I have ever seen. I want to thank everybody involved who helped push this through. The county Environmental Health Services people were amazing at that. Air Pollution Control District was very cooperative. And it really actually, the fact that we actually were only 2 days behind our 30-day period in receiving our permit from APCD is pretty much unheard of. So where we are right now, you saw that we were digging the trenches. As I said, we've dug what we affectionately call the bathtub, which is that 4-foot kind of excavation that we did, and the duck banks. What we're going to do right now is start laying the actual duck banks in there. We'll put our electrical lines through those duck banks. Once that's done, then we will actually start doing some work for the piping. The way the site works out is you can only trench in certain areas. If you trench too much, you can't reach anything with your equipment. So you have to do it in stages. So we'll complete the duck bank area. What we will be doing probably within the next couple of weeks is completing the excavations where we need to put in our stormwater BMPs. Those are somewhat outside of that excavation area. They are a little bit deeper. They do require a little bit more soil coming out, but we can do it because they're not actually impeding anything else on the site. Once we get the duck banks in, then we can actually go ahead and start doing the trenching for the piping excavation, and we hope to complete that by the end of February. This is a portion out of our schedule just to give you an idea of what some of the schedule impacts were. I've highlighted the areas that are truly impacted by this by the light gold and the darker gold. The two of those combined are the portions that were delayed by having to go through the soil cleanup and not being able to do any work on site for 30 days. So basically what those entailed were the excavations that we needed to do and also forming the pads that the reverse osmosis skids will sit on. So we do believe that we will be able to make up a little bit of time in that darker gold area. That area actually represents where we're forming and pouring the concrete pads that the skids will sit on. The way the contractor had originally put the schedule together, they had one set of forms where they would go in and they would form that, they would pour it, then they would move on to the next pad. We believe there's probably a way to condensed some of that by getting some extra forms and doing these more in a series, or a parallel versus a series type of operation. So we are working with the contractor at this point to gain back some of those 30 days that we believe that we've lost. And basically all of this is being driven by the red line on the top that basically says we're procuring and getting the MPDs to site. So that's what's really driving us at this point. We've done some estimates of what we believe the soil cleanup is going to be. We looked at basically the testing, the excavation, the trucking that we've needed to do of the soils. We've looked at the import that we need to do because we will not be able to reuse any of those soils. We're going to need to go out and find new soil to bring in to backfill. We've taken a look at some of the schedule impacts that we believe, and as I said, we're trying to mitigate some of that 30-day time frame that we've lost. And then we've added in a contingency because there still are some moving parts to this. We found out yesterday through the county that, and with their work with the regional board, that they want to extend the buffer area around some of the stormwater areas that we are going to be excavating. So instead of having a buffer of 2 feet, we're going to have a buffer of 5 feet. So that actually just translates into more soil leaving and bringing more soil in. So, for things like that are still kind of a moving target, we've added the contingency in. Our estimate at this point is $2.3 million to take care of the cleanup that we need to for the site. And I do want to emphasize that we are not completely cleaning this site. We are basically digging for the areas that we need to so that we can install the equipment that we need. When we are done with this process, we will still have some contamination on site. We're not going to the depth of groundwater to clean, and we will most likely need a deed restriction on this property, which means that it will not be able to be used for certain types of uses in the future. So we will be working on that once we get through all of this. So just to give you a reference, on a per cubic yard basis of soil that we're taking out, it's $402 is what this estimate is. When we did the Ortega groundwater treatment plant, we went back and looked at those costs, and that was about $360 a cubic foot. What I want to emphasize on that is for the Ortega number, we actually took out the overhead costs that we needed to pay. I was trying to find a number to do estimates, and I knew how to do the schedule impact and overhead for my current project, and I didn't want to wrap that up in. So I'm not sure that these are really all that far apart. I don't feel like we're in different ballparks for the costs that we're estimating here. Just to kind of go over where we are on change order for the project, the way the project was set up, within the contract itself, we had owner-directed changes of about $1.5 million because we knew it was a design build. We didn't have all of the answers. We knew that we were going to need money for things that came up. So that was included in the contract. We also had included in there some compensable days. And basically, those were for any delays that we thought we might have for some government approval that didn't come through. We wanted them to price that for us so that we could plan on it. We also asked for additional change order authority when we awarded the project of about $1.8 million. That gave us a total change order of about $3.7 million. To date, we've used about $600,000 having to do with some electrical change orders that we've needed. We have a potential change order out there right now for about $200,000 that has to do with the sampling that we need to do for our MPDES permit. We need to make some changes in the way that is done, and so that's our estimate for what that's going to cost. Taking those two into account, our estimated change order that's remaining is about $2.9 million. With our estimate of unsuitable soils of about $2.3 million, we would be down to about $600,000 of change order. And we feel that at this point, what we'd really like to do is pretty much replace what we had at the beginning in change order authority as far as the additional change order and the compensable delays. So what we're asking today is to actually increase the change order authority for our contract with IDE, who is constructing the project, and increase their change order to $2.3 million. $2.3 million, and that brings the total expenditures to just over $47.5 million for their contract. Because there are potential impacts to the schedule and we may be out there longer than we had originally anticipated, we'd like to preemptively increase the change order authority for Carollo engineers in case we need their help for that extra period of time that we're going to be out there. If we do manage to compress the schedule, and we are not going to be out there for a longer period of time, then we will not be using that portion of the change order, but we feel that it's prudent to have it in case we need it. We're also at this point asking for an amendment to a professional services contract that we had done. We are required by our loan to have a Chumash monitor on site for any soil disturbances that we do. We had put together a scope for him. It was a very rough estimate of hours of how long he would be out there. At this point in time, we know a little bit better about how long he's going to be out there, so we would like to increase the money that we have available for him so that he can continue to be on site as required by our loan. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. We do have one public comment speaker slip. Why don't we do that right up front? Mr. Walker, come on up.
I'll be quick and concise. A couple of weeks ago, I drove up to Lake Cachuba and walked out to the current Cushman-operated built pump barge. And I had walked out actually to the intake to Tecolote Tunnel in late September 1990 at the low point of the last drought. And what was really a stark display of the sedimentation is the Santa Cruz Bay point there, which essentially if you draw an arrow line across, it's close to the intake, and the amount of sedimentation just physically walking out there and looking at it, it's stark evidence that we're in a fairly time-compressed trade-off, which Councilman White brought up, the fact these storms are not consistent to what I remember having worked through the 97, 98 El Nino and the 82, 83 El Nino, and I just don't sense we're going to get a heavy rain year. Like Joshua Hagemart's brought up a number of months ago, you know, what did he say, 2 out of the last 5 El Ninos have been drier than normal. So you just don't know. It's day to day, and you know, what I say, bring Montecito on board, and talking to contractor personnel, there always is the option, if push comes to shove, to speed up things, putting on a second shift. So thank you very much.
Okay, it's to the council. Mr. Hotchkiss.
Mr. Casey, where would that money come from?
Madam Mayor, council members, from the waterfront, from reserves.
And we have that.
Madam Mayor, it'd also come from the loan. We'd be able to take money from the loan for the desal plant and increase the loan amount.
So we're not worried about our reserves in any way, using reserves.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, at this point, with the $55 million loan, we believe that there are some savings in other portions of the loan that we're using the loan for. We will not need to use reserves for this. We believe that the savings is within that $55 million at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. White.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion, Madam Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
for the council move forward with staff recommendations.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Hart. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and a lot of work in a short period of time, and that's good because time is important here. Thank you.